Welcome to Healthy Births, Happy Babies, where we share tips, tools, and stories grounded in natural childbirth and parenting principles, so that instead of feeling overwhelmed and confused during this exciting time in your life, you feel safe, supported, and empowered in your childbirth and parenting journey. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jay Warren.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. I'm Dr. Jay Warren. I'm the Family Wellness Chiropractor and the Wellness Care Coordinator here at the CAP Wellness Center. And today we have Dr. Laura Brayton here. She is a chiropractor out on the East Coast in Hoboken, New Jersey, and she is a prenatal and a pediatric chiropractor as well. And she's also the host of the Well-Adjusted Mama podcast. It's a podcast that I highly recommend. It's one that I started listening to almost a year ago when I was even starting to think about hosting my own podcast. And I'm just so excited to have her here to share her wisdom. She has a very similar type of podcast in that she interviews experts. And so I wanted to bring her here today to be able to share with you what she's learned from interviewing 75 experts on prenatal care and natural birth and postpartum care. But before I bring Dr. Brayton on, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the CAP Wellness Center, who makes this podcast possible. At the CAP Wellness Center in Encinitas, California, we've assembled an incredible team of fully certified holistic healthcare professionals that offer the very best in prenatal, postpartum, and pediatric wellness services. We offer acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, yoga, lactation support services, and a wide variety of birth education classes to ensure that you are fully able to experience the power of birth. So now let me introduce Dr. Laura Brayton to you. Dr. Laura Brayton is a holistic chiropractor who is passionate about supporting the health and wellness of the families of her community. Dr. Brayton writes regularly on health-related topics and is a lecturer for various holistic groups in the community, including yoga studios, birth education centers, and new moms groups. And in 2015, she was chosen by the New Jersey Family Magazine as one of New Jersey's favorite kids' docs. Dr. Brayton has received certifications in chiropractic pediatrics, the Webster technique for breech presentation, sound-assisted soft tissue mobilization, and she is an advanced level practitioner of the allergy elimination technique NAET and a bioenergetic practitioner utilizing applied kinesiology. In the fall of 2014, she spent a month in Bali writing her first book on the topic of birth and is excitedly awaiting its publication. And on Labor Day in 2014, she birthed a podcast called The Well-Adjusted Mama to educate and to empower women preconception through early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. That's a podcast I highly recommend to my patients, and I recommend you check that out as well. So now let me switch you over to my conversation with Dr. Laura Brayton. Dr. Brayton, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dr. J. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic for you to be here on my podcast because we talked a little bit before, but your podcast I found about a year ago when I was getting interested in podcasting, and I listened to tons of your episodes, and you really inspired me to, get started myself. So I'm really happy that you're here to be able to share your expertise of what you've learned.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being a fan of Well-Adjusted Mama. It's been so much fun for me to do the podcast, and I'm sure you've been able to have a similar experience of really it's just so rewarding to connect with other types of like-minded practitioners and to really get this information out to women that are really hungry for, this type of information.
Yeah, hungry is right. I mean, it's something that we really kind of started our podcast as an audio library just for the patients that we were taking care of in the CAP Wellness Center. But then, through iTunes, it just blossomed out all over the place. And it's amazing how many women are really searching for natural solutions to not just, pregnancy-related issues and childbirth, but then also for care of their kiddos when they're here on the other side of the pregnancy. So, right. Resources like the Well-Adjusted Mama and just as many as we can get out there are just really invaluable.
I agree.
Well, we heard a little bit about yourself with your bio that I read before we got on the interview here, but share a little bit more about yourself and how you got interested in, really in pregnancy and children's care before we even go into the rest of the subject.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I have been under chiropractic care my entire life since I was in utero, and I think that really plays a big part of why I have the philosophy on health, regarding how the body has the ability to heal itself and, really looking for natural solutions for maintaining and preventing health challenges, but also to address anything that comes up. That's just been the lifestyle that I was raised with. So I'm very grateful that my parents, raised me in that type of mindset. So just from a very little girl, I was fascinated with the body and how it worked, and I loved going to see the chiropractor and getting adjusted. And I think I was maybe about 5 years old, and my dad said, you should be a chiropractor one day. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe, but I'm like, well, our chiropractor's office smells like biofreeze, and I was just really like, it was that menthol scent. Right. And that a 5-year-old girl didn't seem really sexy or like something that I would really be interested in doing as a career. But it stayed with me. And the reality is that I can have a practice that doesn't have that menthol scent to it, and I have a really warm, feminine, decorated type office that is very child friendly, and we have toys and soft music, and I think that's the cool thing too. As a chiropractor, you have your own business and you can make it what you want. And I very much felt called to serving women and children, and especially, supporting through the pregnancy process. So it's something that I've been building for the past 11 years, and I'm just really happy to be doing this work.
Yeah. And you're out on the East Coast, right, in New Jersey?
Yeah, my practice is in Hoboken, New Jersey. I'm right across from Midtown Manhattan, and I have patients come in from New York, Brooklyn, Hoboken, Jersey City, and the whole, Hudson County area. And it's just really awesome to be able to take care of them. It's kind of fascinating actually being on the East Coast, because when I go out to California, there is definitely a different mindset regarding health on the West Coast of the U.S. Yes. And I feel like the West Coast is maybe like 10, 15 years ahead of the East Coast, believe it or not. Like there's definitely, we're not quite having that same type of awareness regarding our lifestyle. It's much more of a high-paced, stressful place to live. A lot of type A personalities are drawn to New York City and the surrounding area. So, I'm here kind of supporting that type of population, very, go-getters, working 80 hours a week and, really just kind of burning themselves out. So especially these women that are very high-powered, they have very successful careers, and now they're really wanting to become a mother in their late 30s, early 40s, which is pretty typical around here as a first-time mom. And then they're like, wow, why am I having difficulty getting pregnant? And we have to kind of say, well, it's not just an age thing. There's a lifestyle thing that we need to address. Right. And that's actually, can be challenging when you're used to operating in a certain manner.
Right. Well, even more so how important it is for you to be there and doing what you're doing, because people even more so need, everyone needs what you're offering, but especially if that population is so type A and just going, to slow them down is really important. Are you finding how are you able to do that? Is it something where finally when a woman's becoming pregnant that a shift happens there, or are you still doing a lot of education work during the pregnancy?
Both. Some of it's the preconception work, and it's really kind of like how long have they been trying to get pregnant, how many failed, IVFs have they already gone through, how many thousands of dollars have they already invested in trying to start a family, and it depends on the pain point. I think for a lot of us as human beings, we move towards pleasure and away from pain. And, it's unfortunate sometimes that, these families have to go through a lot financially, emotionally, physically, multiple miscarriages, and they really start looking for other solutions. And that's how sometimes they end up in my office. Sometimes I'm able to catch them earlier, which is ideal. But yeah, even during pregnancy, sometimes these women are just really going, and we just continue that conversation about, the adrenal fatigue and how we want to just help support that whole neuroendocrine system and not being exhausted from stress so that their hormone levels are more in balance and the baby's biochemistry in utero is impacted by that woman's stress level. So this is not just about mom's health, but this is really about the baby that she's creating as well, and, really optimizing the type of pregnancy she's having so she can have a better birth outcome and a healthier baby.
Right. Well, and we're learning so much more with the whole field of epigenetics becoming so much bigger about how exactly that pregnancy, that environment that the baby's essentially marinating in is shaping their health profile when they come out.
Right.
And I know I found with a lot of the kind of driven women during the pregnancy, there is a mentality of, well, once the baby comes, I'll slow down. And once the baby comes, I'll make those shifts and things. And it's not necessarily too late, because it's never too late to make a shift towards health, but understanding how much it can impact the genetic profile as well as just kind of the emotional profile. Because it makes sense if you're marinating in a stressful environment, your body and your mind's really getting prepared for a stressful environment on the other side, and those babies are just way more wired.
That's right. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it is important. And in an ideal world, we're doing this type of lifestyle modifications, which includes detoxification and awareness of how you're being exposed to toxins in your life daily, from chemical cleaners and skincare products, makeup, food, and how we can start to minimize that exposure. But the previous exposure over your entire lifetime, how can we start to get that out of your system so that there's really a healthy environment for conception and going forward throughout? Because now we are finding we're just living in more of a polluted environment, that 100% of babies are born with there's some toxins within the umbilical blood. They have done this research and study this, and so we see how these chemical toxins can shift the genetics, and this is occurring while this baby is developing in utero. And so through Bruce Lipton's work, we really can understand more how these epigenetics do play a part. And I think that's a big deal of what we're seeing now with a lot of childhood chronic illnesses that are really skyrocketing. A lot of this, some of the toxic exposure is after these children are born, but certainly some of it's happening while they're in utero as well.
Right, and that's a really important part of, pregnancy is a time when women make fantastic health changes. I always joke in the prenatal wellness class I teach is that, what's the first thing you do when you find out you're pregnant? Like, you start taking prenatal vitamins and you stop drinking.
Right.
You're already making a shift, but there's always so much more that can be done even before you find out you're pregnant that can make an impact. Again, it's one of those things, well, if you don't know what you don't know, and if you're already pregnant, you can't, lament that. But
that's right.
Going forward, looking at all the resources that you've accrued through your podcast and just knowing your presence on the web is really geared towards educating a woman around the environment that you're creating for yourself as well as for the baby, as well as for the family on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one resource that comes up a lot on my podcast, and I'm not sure if other guests on your podcast have mentioned, but I love the Environmental Working Group. The research and data they've collected is invaluable for women and moms to know about. You can go to their website at ewg.org. They also have an app called Skin Deep, and essentially they do the research regarding the different, the thousands of chemical toxins in our environment and products that they're found in. So if you're wanting to make, really smart choices regarding the type of healthcare products, skincare products, and household cleaners and beyond of what you're buying for your home and for your family, whether it's for yourself, your husband, your child, whoever, they actually help break it down and show you what's safe and what's not safe. And so with the app, you can scan the barcode of products while you're at the store, and then it tells you immediately, what's in that product and whether it's safe or not. Because I think one thing to be aware of, these companies, especially the larger corporations, they spend a lot of money on advertising and marketing, and their job, their whole point is to sell product, right? So sometimes that product marketing can be a little bit deceptive. Things can be labeled as natural that really aren't natural, and or safe for baby. I mean, products are marketed for babies and children all the time that have chemicals in them that really aren't safe. So unfortunately, we have to do our due diligence as parents to be smart consumers about what we're purchasing for our families. And, I think that the Environmental Working Group is really a helpful tool for families to be smart consumers.
Right. Well, I'll definitely include those links. It's something I know I've used as a parent myself, so I'll make sure that it's in the podcast notes as well. And I've seen that as, a parent myself, but also working with families here throughout the pregnancy process, is there's a huge education that happens around like looking on the web for resources that are going to give you the type of information that's congruent with the way you want to raise your family. And that's a process for every parent to go through to find those go-to websites. And I think the ewg.org definitely is one of those. And then health-wise, it's important so that, at 2 a.m. when your little one's crying and you have to look up something online, you're not going to Dr. Google, you're going to the websites that are tried and true and have important information or good information about the way that you would want to handle those solutions, whether they're natural, whether they're medical, or a combination of the two.
That's right. And I think to your point with the internet is such a blessing and a curse at the same time. There's so much information on there. You really do want to know which websites are trustworthy. They don't have an agenda. They're there just to present the facts. And then with that information, parents are more armed to make empowered decisions from a place of fact as opposed to a slant.
Right. Well, and with all of the guests that you've had, you've had over 70 episodes. You've been going since, was it September of 2014 with your podcast?
Right.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's incredible. I know how
Thank
much
you.
work and it can be to do a podcast. So that's fantastic, your consistency. With all of the experts that you've had on, first and prenatally, is it really the stress that a woman is under that you find is the biggest challenge for women to overcome, or are there other ones as well?
I think emotional stress is a big factor for all of us, whether we're pregnant or not, and that certainly, plays a part with newly pregnant women, because about half those women are actually unplanned. So I've had women in my office on both sides of the coin, some that were not trying to get pregnant and found themselves pregnant, and the stress that comes along with preparing for a new member to the family where that preparation wasn't necessarily in place at that point. And then I've also seen women, just go through years of fertility treatment and all the stress, the years of stress on their body and their minds from trying to create this baby. They're so wanting to have this child, and even during the pregnancy, there's stress of, am I going to lose this baby? Am I going to be able to make it to full term? Will my baby be healthy? And so these are real concerns, but these are things that can be managed. And so what's some of the best ways to help support a woman that's going through these different emotional ups and downs, roller coasters, is just listening to her, I find, is so valuable. Letting her just speak what her truth is. How is she feeling? Why is she feeling that way? From a non-judgmental perspective, I think is huge. These women need more support during their pregnancy, and all women do. It's a major shift in a woman's life to go through this process at so many different levels, and so feeling that she's heard and respected, I think, is important. I like to remind moms, if they need it, to really trust their intuition. I think it is intuitive for a woman to listen to her gut, but sometimes she can feel very confused and overwhelmed, and then she starts to forget about her intuition. And so just gently reminding her that that's there, and she knows her body better than anyone else. So this is her journey, right? And it's not for anyone to tell her what to do or how to do it. And other, chiropractic adjustments are really helpful with helping to decrease that stress level on the nervous system, physically and emotional stress and chemical stress. So getting adjusted throughout the pregnancy I see is very valuable. And then there's other great modalities, prenatal yoga, prenatal massage, acupuncture, and even like hypnobirthing, hypnotherapy can be done during pregnancy where a woman might be feeling a little more anxious. Then these are things that we can help support her to feel a little bit more calm, and even homeopathic remedies can help with that too.
Right. And that's absolutely vital, one, for the health of the mama as well as the baby, as we talked about with epigenetics, but then also it's going to make the birth itself that much more safe and gentle. Because if that stress physiology is in play during the laboring process, it's going to prolong labor. It's going to just make it more difficult for the baby to come through. And then that all sets up things for postpartum. And I think that's something that is so key too. All the principles and the concepts you were talking about prenatally around, trusting your intuition, being heard, having a support group is absolutely important as well on the postpartum side of things, because I've definitely seen there's been kind of a black hole that parents go into where they just kind of hole up, and part of that sanctuary time is really important for the whole family to kind of get to know each other in that fourth trimester type of feel, but also sometimes there can be a lot of isolation. And so postpartum, is that something you're seeing as well, like trying to reach out and bring women into, stay in the community as well? Yeah.
And I do see that, potential for new parents, especially first-time new parents, to really feel a little bit overwhelmed and lost. And, it's a pretty common phenomenon, and it's unfortunate because it's something that is really showing up more as our culture has shifted. There's less community, I feel like, in the United States especially, and just more areas where people are so preoccupied with their careers that there isn't that type of family community support after a baby is born that we might have seen, in the past. And so this is a time when a new mom really needs, her mother, her grandmother, sister, and if those family members aren't available, then hiring a postpartum doula is one of the most fabulous things you can do, to have somebody there to help you with nursing. Nursing, believe it or not, is not just a natural thing that women know how to do. It's natural for the baby to know how to nurse, but for women, if you haven't grown up watching other women openly nurse, then we don't learn how to do it. And that's where bringing a lactation consultant to come to your home and help support you with that can really make a difference. And a lot of postpartum doulas are also trained as lactation consultants. So they're there to help support with the feeding process. They're there to help with household errands and chores like cleaning and cooking and laundry and picking up groceries. These are all things that, a new mom should not have to be stressing about. And she can just feel like she can just, stay home, nurse her baby, rest, relax, recover from the birth, and feel that she's supported.
Right. And in all the work that, or all the things a woman does during the pregnancy to be as healthy as possible, for the birth to go as healthy as possible, then allows them to go into newborn parenthood that much more sustained and full. So you can get into just like loving on the kid and bonding with the kid rather than coming in so depleted that it interferes with that bonding process.
It does. It really does. And if the birth was traumatic or a lot of strain that occurred during the birth, then that also will just make it more challenging on the other end for both mom and baby. There could be difficulties with nursing. There could be difficulties with bonding. I had the pleasure of listening to your podcast with Dr. Sarah Buckley, and she was talking about the hormonal cascade and the fact that if a woman does not go through the labor process and has a scheduled C-section, it really can impact the oxytocin levels and how the baby and mom bond. And, this is all just, neuroscience and biochemistry, right? Like that's the way our bodies are wired. And humans were wired that way for a reason. And when we interfere with nature, it does play a part. But I think there is hope. And I love that she talks about that even if these things do happen, if there are interventions, if there are, life-saving measures that need to happen during a birth, there's still hope on the other end when you are supported, with a partner and other family and other women in your community coming to help. Then you can still reconnect and bond and produce that oxytocin. It just might take an extra few days, but you get that baby on your skin to skin, and you can still make it happen. So that's the beauty of the body, is despite what happens, is we always have an opportunity to heal and recover. And so I think the big picture here is what needs to happen to help remove any interferences to that healing process and to help support the body in that healing, in the healing.
Right. And, specifically that episode, I learned so much from Dr. Buckley, and that specific portion really, it was a light bulb that went off of understanding, okay, if that were to go that way, and it might have been the first choice, but the birth went with a planned C-section, to just knowing as a practitioner, okay, if that's the way that happened, let's give her some extra support because this is going to go. And that education is invaluable. I mean, that is something that will forever change the way that I care for the women here, to know that, all right, if that's that scenario they went through, that extra support is needed and can be overcome. It's not something we have to regret that. It's more of, okay, that's what it is. You got your baby here, and let's do some extra work. And I think that's the big thing here is, this is a major abdominal surgery that these women are going through, and a lot of times it's so commonplace, 1 in 3 births now are C-section, that it's almost like the reality of that recovery period is kind of neglected. And additional nutrition and supplementation makes sense for anybody after going through a surgical process, right? So new mom's no different. And then caring for that baby is going to be more challenging after having major abdominal surgery. So having help with that, especially those first few weeks, is so important, whether it's a baby nurse or, like I mentioned, a postpartum doula, or if you're lucky to have, a trusted family member that can come and stay at the home for those first few weeks. I mean, these are all really just helpful resources, and and so it's just good to be aware that that this is a normal response to that type of scenario, instead of feeling like, oh, why can't I just bounce out of bed and take care of my baby, Right.
Like, no, your body needs to heal. Like, you went through a lot. So how can you be supported?
Right. Well, Dr. Brayton, thank you so much for being here today. You obviously have such a wealth of knowledge, and I know online you have a lot of different resources for pregnant women. So how can they get those?
Yes, so they can check out my podcast on iTunes, Well-Adjusted Mama, and they can also find more information about me. I have 2 websites, drlaurabrayton.com, as well as hobokenchiro.com. And if there's any questions or anything you want to know, just please reach out to me through either of those websites, and we can. I'm always happy to share and support.
Yeah, and I'll make sure those links are on the podcast show notes, as well as on the webpage that we'll put up for this episode. And with our last minutes, Dr. Brayton, what is the kind of major take-home that you'd like a woman listening to this podcast, or whether it's something we mentioned already or something else, some wisdom you'd like to pass on to the moms listening? Yeah,
I think the biggest thing here is for women to know that their body is not broken. Our bodies are absolutely amazing and fascinating, and the better we take care of them, the better they perform. And so there's so much that you can do throughout your pregnancy to really help support you in the way you feel, so that you can feel good, you can have energy, you can not, dread the pregnancy or feel like crap for the pregnancy. You can really have optimal health by eating healthy foods, getting some exercise, getting chiropractic adjustments. They really make such a difference during the pregnancy. And by living that lifestyle, you're really setting yourself up to have a successful birth. And a successful, natural, gentle birth will really put both you and the baby into a great place on the other side to have, an easier time with the new parenting. And so this is all what's possible by just reaching out and getting support and going to practitioners that are holistic minded and are respectful of your philosophy and here to support what your vision is for your pregnancy and birth.
Beautiful. And what about for the little babies that might be listening? I always like to end with a question for them about if they're listening through mama's belly, because mom's still pregnant, or they're here. What's one piece of advice or words of wisdom or welcoming that you'd like to whisper into their little ear?
I think my advice to them would be that their mom and their dad are doing the best they can, and this is an opportunity for us to grow ourselves. We get to grow based on our initial parenting experiences, and that's the beauty. They picked the parents that they're with, so there's a reason why those are your parents.
Yes. Well, yes, we all choose, and we are doing the best that we can. That's for sure as parents. Well, Dr. Brayton, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom here today. I'll make sure all these links are there for people to reach out to you. And again, I just want to really thank you for all the work that you're doing on the East Coast, but also just as far as the podcast being a resource for our patients here as well, to have just more and more information, help them have the births they want to have and have the family lives they want to have. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about this episode and other natural childbirth and parenting topics, please visit us at capwellnesscenter.com or message us on our Facebook page with any questions you might have. We here at the Cap Wellness Center look forward to helping you and your family be as happy and healthy as you can be.